Hello and welcome to the first video on my channel. I'm Tom Heist, and today I will be giving you a walkthrough of my default set. You can download this set from the link below. It contains some very useful features for reference mixing and mix analysis. There are a couple of third-party plugins in this set, all of which are completely free and can be downloaded from the links below. Please note you will need these third-party plugins installed in order to get the most out of this set. So I've got this set saved in my user library under a custom default sets folder, and I've just got a couple of good starting points for when I'm working on a track and I want some routing already set up and some tools already available to me. From the left you can see 3 channels. We've got our standard just audio and MIDI channels, but we've also got this track called reference, and this track is used for loading up a reference mix in order to compare what we're working on to a professionally mixed track. Over on the right, we've got a number of return channels. Firstly, we've got one titled reference and one titled submaster. Submaster is just getting audio from these four different submix channels, and this would be just used for typical purposes like busing all your drums to one, busing all your music to one, and so on and so on. At the moment, just the standard audio and MIDI channels are going to the first bus, but you can obviously bus them however you like via the sends. The reason I've got these two set up here is that we can toggle between our track and a reference track just by pressing Z and X on the keyboard with this set. So very, very handy for instantly jumping between a reference track and our track that we're working on. Finally, on the end, there's reverb and delay, just standard stuff, and you can send to whatever reverb that you've got going on there via the sends on each channel. So pretty ordinary stuff. The master is where it gets a little bit interesting. So I'm just going to press Z on the keyboard and toggle over to our reference track. And first of all, on the master, we've got this tool called the EQ8 listener. So let's play our reference track here. And when we turn this on, we've just got this steep high pass and low pass filter set up, and we can use these controls to zoom in on different areas of the frequency spectrum. And you can use this in conjunction with pressing Z and X on the keyboard to toggle back and forth between a reference mix and the track we're working on. This is useful for having a look at typical mix problem spots, like say the 300 to 800 Hertz region. This is typically a region of the frequency spectrum where you want to have a lot of clarity between the different elements that are going on. You want to be able to discern each individual element whilst only being able to hear this area of the frequency spectrum. And obviously you can do that with great ease with this tool. Next up, we've got the mid-side splitter, and this one also has some keyboard controls attached to it. So if I press play on the reference track, and then I press M on the keyboard, now we are listening to a reference track in mono. But if I press N on the keyboard, now we are listening to the exclusively stereo information on our reference mix. Now this tool has a number of uses. A few examples: making sure your mix works in mono. So say there's no elements that drastically change volume when you collapse the mix to mono. Comparing your track's overall width to a reference mix, listening to the exclusively stereo information in a reference mix, maybe to determine which elements of that reference mix have stereo processing on them, or finding stereo phase issues in your mix. Say if you've used the Haas effect and the tone of a particular element drastically changes when you collapse a mix to mono. Next up, we've got the first of our third-party plugins, Smexoscope. This is a simple waveform visualization plugin, very useful for setting your limiter, finding unwanted peaks in the audio. You can actually drag down a line from the top, and then that line will stay there when you toggle back and forth between your track and a reference track, so you can see how much limiting they've got going on versus your track. Very cool. Next up, we've got Voxengo Span. This is an excellent spectrum analyzer. I'm going to do a video on this plugin in the future, just talking a little bit more about how I personally use it and some of the many features that are available in this plugin. All you need to know for now is it's an absolutely excellent spectrum analyzer and an essential tool for mixing and mastering. And finally, on the master, we've got the Ulean loudness meter, and this measures your track or a reference track according to the internationally recognized loudness standard LUFS. So this is used by streaming platforms such as Spotify to determine whether or not your track needs to be turned up or down in order to keep it in line with the same listening level as all the other tracks you'd be streaming on there. So an absolutely essential tool for getting your loudness right. That's it for the features in this my default set. You can download it below along with any of the third-party plugins used, all of which are completely free. If you find it useful or you just like the sound of my voice, please like, subscribe, leave a comment and ring that little bell and I will produce more. Bye!